And my sincere thank yous for the work that you're doing, that your staff is doing. I yield back to the chairman, sir.
Gentleman yields back. I have a couple of items to submit to the record here. The first is the section 70203, labeled the Presidio Trust. This is from the draft IRA bill that was heard in this committee on September 2021. And it does have language in it that says, in addition to the amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Presidio Trust for fiscal year 2022 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $200 million to remain available until September 30th, 2026. And again, this was the draft bill that was heard in this committee. It was highly objected to by our side of the aisle for a special, not even an earmark for Speaker Pelosi, but just a direct expenditure for the Presidio. So we objected to that, and also I'm submitting to the record Public Law 117-169 from August 16, 2022, also known as the IRA Act. This is the law that was passed. It says under Section 50224 under the National Park System Deferred Maintenance, in addition to the amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Secretary for fiscal year 2022 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $200 million to remain available through September 30th, 2026 to carry out priority deferred maintenance projects through direct expenditures or transfers within the boundaries of the National Park System. That is the law. Without objection, it's so ordered. So Secretary Haaland, I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. It's clear in the law that it was not the intent of Congress for $200 million to go to Presidio Park. Actually, would you agree or disagree that by the fact that it was $200 million in the hearing and the final law for Presidio, and in the final law, it specifically did not say Presidio? How would you say that his congressional intent for $200 million to go to Presidio Park?
Congressman, first I would just like to say that we're all very proud to have the Presidio as a public land that belongs to all Americans. So,
but do you believe that's intent or not intent?
It is my understanding that we merely implemented the congressional intent on the deferred maintenance provision in the Inflation Reduction Act with respect to the Presidio.
The law specifically does not say Presidio. You've testified earlier that you or no one in your staff spoke to former Speaker Pelosi's office. So how did you determine that it was congressional intent to send all $200 million of deferred maintenance to Presidio Park? I mean, the perception is that this was a payoff to Speaker Pelosi for getting the IRA passed, that this is an issue she pushed and continued to push and got it stuck into the IRA. And then her friends in the administration turned around and sent that money to Presidio, even though there was high objection from Congress for putting that money specifically there. So how do you dispel that perception?
Chairman, I want to assure you that we follow the law on every single thing that we do. I cannot speak to the specifics of the situation at this time.
There were $200 million specifically sent to your agency for maintenance backlog, and all of it went to the Presidio Park, which was not the intent of Congress. I want to move on. You've talked about a climate crisis, and there's also a perception that that this administration has put an all-out attack on domestic energy. I think the actions of this administration and your department would substantiate that. But you've presented a different picture here today. You've said that under your leadership, there's more production of oil and gas on federal lands than ever before. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
So do you take credit for that, or do you think that's because of actions that have happened before, or does the Biden administration take credit for that?
Well, I mean, I don't think we go to work every day thinking about who's going to get credit for what. We're just doing our jobs.
So
And
how
when
much
permits
of-
come through, we...
How much of that production would you say has happened on permits issued under this administration?
Well, we have certainly approved many applications for permits to drill. That's our job. We're following the law with respect to that. If land is leased and folks have rights to the land and they submit a permit, an application for a permit to drill, we have to process it.
Do you think there's an energy crisis in our country? You've talked about a climate crisis. Do you think there's an energy crisis?
Chairman, I know that President Biden is committed to energy independence for our country. That's the
I've
reason
heard
why
that.
we are going gangbusters on our clean energy transition. Those are viable sources of energy that we are working to lift up.
At the end of March, we passed H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Cost Act. We had a press conference in the middle of the afternoon. Later in the afternoon, the country's focus was shifted towards the Manhattan DA, and under the radar the next day, OPEC announced a supply cut on oil. And today, gasoline prices are 6.8% higher than they were at the end of March because OPEC has control of the dial on the price at the gas pump. Do you think if the U.S., are you committed to producing more energy in the U.S., of all the above energy, and the world didn't get the memo on the transition? This is global consumption of energy by fuel source. The transition that gets talked about here is what I can hardly see from where I'm sitting, wind and solar. From here to here is all carbon emitting sources. That's what's happening on the world market today. You've talked about removing dams in Mr. Bence's district. The largest component of non-carbon emitting energy is hydropower. Yet this administration gives lip service, tries to create the perception that it's about all of the above energy, that we're producing more energy on federal lands than ever before. Yet I think we're ignoring the facts, and there's not an all-out effort to increase all forms of energy. I know 30 gigawatts of wind power by 2030. Guess what? China built 38 gigawatts of coal-powered plants last year, and they'll build that many again this year. So that's a tiny drop in the bucket to get to the point that we need to go. So my final question is, are you committed to an all of the above energy strategy that lowers cost for Americans? Are you committed to reducing the permitting debacle that keeps not just traditional energy projects from happening, but from new energy sources such as wind and solar? Can we work together to make those things happen?
Congressman, Chairman, pardon me. We're always willing to work with you in your office. Our door's open. Please reach out to us when you would like. We are committed to energy independence for our country. We believe very strongly that for our part in the Department of the Interior, moving our clean energy sources forward are one component of our vast energy production resources. And of course, we're willing to work with anyone to make sure that our country is set for the future. I really do have to say that all of this is because climate change is the crisis of our lifetime. We have an obligation to future generations to make sure that we have a planet for them to live on. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm working incredibly hard to make sure that we can realize that transition, that we can have differing energy sources. We can't continue to be a one industry country. We're expanding. We're proud of the expansions we're making. We're going to continue to work very hard. And certainly all the career staff who are working diligently to move any and all permits forward, they'll continue with your help on our budget. And we appreciate very much you listening to me today as well.
And thank you, Secretary. And I'll just close by saying that I think we're all working towards the most affordable, reliable, and cleanest energy for the future, but we have to use common sense in that, and we can't ignore the data, ignore the facts, and ignore the logic, and get blinded by an emotional argument that is very real, but we also need to be realistic in the policies that we make and the way that those policies are executed. Again, thank you for your valuable testimony, and thank you to the members who participated today. There may be some additional questions by members of the committee, and we'll ask you to respond to those in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. Eastern on April 22nd. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. If there is no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned.